or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road, bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. With hard work we built a dream that only willing hands could do. It's on display at our fall fairs and at all the festivals too. Erie beaches, Carolinian forests, where the flower and dogwoods bloom. Patchwork fields and rolling hills, it's just a place for you. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Norfolk, 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 you won't be a stranger long. On a strip of sandy soil lies a county called Norfolk. It's Ontario's south coast, you know, and it's surely not remote. If you pass through or spend a day or decide to call it home, you'll see why we love it here and are proud to call it our own. Norfolk, Norfolk, a southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long. Take in the small town atmosphere, be amazed at all that we grow. Like our kids that go and see the world and can't wait to return home. Drop a line in a placid lake or stroll along the shore. Take a tour on a peaceful country road, and bound to be back for more. Of Norfolk, Norfolk, my Southern county home. Norfolk, Norfolk, we know you can't go wrong with the friendly folk of Norfolk. You won't be a stranger long.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good to see everybody here on this lovely summer day here in Norfolk County. This is our November 28th, 2017 council meeting. And of course, as usual, just a reminder, including myself, my cell phone is on the silence mode. That's appreciated, Charlie. We are web streamed, we are televised. Again, Bill Jackson continues to volunteer, and he is looking after our camera productivity today in the broadcast. So we would like to thank you, Bill, again for the time that you spend here assisting us. I want to just mention that Councillor Sonnenberg is not with us today. He's on personal business, so he will not be in attendance this evening. There are no changes to the agenda this evening. I would like to have a mover and a seconder that we approve the agenda. Wells has moved. No, I've got it here. My apologies. Brunton has moved. Wells has seconded that the agenda be approved as presented. Those in favor? We will follow the agenda as you have just approved it. Thank you, gentlemen. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest to declare on this evening's agenda? I hear none. No presentations, no deputations this afternoon. Yeah, just looking to remind myself, Councillor Brunton?
Mayor Luke, I have a question about a memo we got. I guess it would be last week in our package, and I wonder if we're going to deal with that in camera. Regarding insurance, I don't think that's a big issue. It was a confidential memo, and it was for information, but I wonder if there's any... Do you recall that?
I have the memos in front of me from last week. There were two. One, actually, I have a copy of both I have two copies of the same memo. That's how informed I am. Yeah, this one here, dated November 13th. Yeah, I have two of them here.
The reason I asked that is there's a change in there possible, and I wonder if we're going to deal with it.
Well, I can answer and tell you that this memo is not on the agenda that I've had for this in-camera session we'll be dealing with later in the meeting. So having said that, and you correct me if I'm out of term here, but this is not on here. So I guess if the question is, if you have a question on this, when do you deal with it? Can you deal in closed session today or not?
Well, I think there's some questions to be asked about it. Maybe I'm wrong the way I've read it.
Well, anybody can have a question on any memo at any time, whether I think there's a question or not. So your question is, when could you ask the question on this memo? Correct?
Yeah, I guess.
And there may be other questions, but I'm not aware of any. I read it, I don't have any, but
No? Okay.
that's not to saying there aren't some questions to be asked. Thank you.
So the matter has already been properly, albeit confidentially, put on a prior agenda,
Yes,
meaning now, and that was 2 weeks ago today.
that's correct, 13th.
So we can deal with this one of two ways. If you wish to attempt to address it today, we could go in camera. It would be under litigation privilege so that you can ask your questions. Staff weren't anticipating any because there weren't any asked the last time around, but that doesn't mean you can't. You have that right. In the alternative, if for whatever reason that doesn't please council, I would suggest you could certainly bring a notice of motion to force it on a future in-camera agenda, and we'll address it then. So if you feel it's timely, we could deal with the matter tonight. We'll add an item for litigation privilege,
Well,
which is, or we can do, but either way, ultimately we can get it on an agenda.
you can leave it, and I will ask you later. How's that?
That works too, sir.
Is that in closed session? He should have brought this forward. He should have brought this forward, but if you want to do it, wait till we get in camera. I don't have a problem.
I got my answer for now.
Okay, all right. It's not a question that, or whether you can ask a question on, it's whether, after we now have set the agenda, whether this can be added, because the items listed on the in-camera, I think there's about 5 of them, they are part of the agenda, but there's to be no additions. Because we just passed a motion saying there would be no additions. So we'll look at this later, okay? Is that fair enough? Thank you, Councillor Brunton. Appreciate that. Let's go to item 6 then, please. This is the adoption, correction of our council meeting of 2 weeks ago, which is the 14th. I think that should be the 13th. I'm not sure. No, it's the 14th. Today's the 28th. There on page 7, is there anything there that is out of line? I hear none. I have read them. I'm not aware of any, and I will declare those adopted as they are printed in our package. Let's go to item 7 then, and we're in the communications. And there are 4. Yes, there are 4. The first item is on the natural gas wells response from the Honorable Catherine McGarry, Ministry of Natural Resources. The second is from the Ministry of Attorney General on Stronger Fair Ontario Act introduction. Third is from Evelyn Eichenbaum, who is the Clerk of Haldeman County. These are council appointments for the new term starting December. And finally, Neil Unwin is the Chairperson of Crime Stoppers of Haldeman, Norfolk, and their request. I will entertain, I think what I'll do is go ahead with the motion and then look for any discussion on this. Is that fair? I think I'll put it on the floor, all four of them, then you can discuss them at your leisure. Moved by Oliver, seconded by Geisens, that communication items A through D inclusive be approved as recommended. Discussion on any of them. I saw Height and then Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question has to do with Haldeman County taking Norfolk County's place at the Grand River Conservation Authority. I would ask that this council allow me to sit on this board for the period of 1 year. The reason why I feel it's important, I'm not sure when it's been that the last time Norfolk actually represented itself at the Grand River, but I feel it's important to go there because the Grand River is one of the biggest conservation authorities in Ontario, and obviously they have certain ways of doing things. I've met a lot of their staff, and I discussed issues with them and how they manage to work on them. And I would like the opportunity to sit on this board, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Height, this is what I suggest. Without getting into any debate of it, we know that we do pay some money to them because we have a very small part of the watershed up in the northeast corner of the county. I would suggest we leave this motion as is, and then if we wish to follow through, I will entertain a motion as such.
Thank you for
Is
that.
that fair? I think that's fair to receive these, and then I'll take any follow-up, okay? If you have something in writing for that. So we are prepared for that if you want to wait till we get through. You can only deal with one motion at a time, okay? So I can't leave A to D to receive and then go back? Okay, the clerk, I am going to follow her direction. The clerk has suggested that the motion, Oliver and Geisens, be that communications items A, B, and D be received as approved and as recommended. Be approved as recommended, then we can go to C to deal with it separately. Is that okay, Councillor Oliver? All right, we'll go with A, B. Geisens, okay? Okay, and that means I am going to deal with C separately, and we do have a motion that we can discuss. I had Councillor, are you finished? I'm sorry. For now? No, are you just finished? Okay. Yeah, we'll get back to item C. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is about the first letter, the one from the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, and you'll correct me if I'm out of order because it doesn't necessarily relate directly to the minister's response, but I had a constituent the other day, and I'm sort of directing this to any of the staff that have been involved, Mr. Mayor, in our response to the gas well problems. This person asked me if we had ever considered, or if the powers that be had ever considered possibly flaring off gas from a well that begins to spew the methane, for example. Obviously, we couldn't necessarily do it with the one that we're currently monitoring because it's underwater. But with any others, is that technology something that does get used from time to time with flare-offs? That's my generic question. If no one can answer it today, I'll leave it and maybe
No,
someone can get back.
that's an appropriate question, I believe, and we'll go to our gas expert here, Lee. I say that affectionately.
Maybe hot air, not so much
Okay.
gas.
Well, I was thinking of that, but
Through the mayor to council, there are certain circumstances where it is something that is possible, and there are certain circumstances where it is not, and so each well has to be evaluated on an individual basis, and as you know, the current one is not in a situation where we would be able to address it.
Wells, please.
Mayor. Mr. Mayor, just a question on this letter that we received. When we talk about plugged or orphaned wells, operators and or landlords are responsible. My question is, these are plugged and they're orphaned. If I buy that property without knowing that I have a problem underneath, am I still responsible for that, even though I didn't know it was there?
Sorry if I may. Through the chair. Our understanding of how the system works from the MNRF itself is that they take the position that if it has been plugged once already, that the program exists so that to spread risk, so that the taxpayers around Ontario help individual landowners who had no way of knowing, etc. But if the well's already been plugged, then it's on the property owner. If you find an abandoned one that hasn't been plugged, then the program applies to help. So it's a due diligence part on the potential purchaser. And that's how Ontario has been fairly consistently interpreting its own guideline on that item.
Thank you for that. I will not shoot the messenger, but it seems unfair that somebody not knowing is then responsible. And I know Mr. Councillor Black has a fancy name for that. Me, I have a fancy name too. And it's not quite the same as his. Thank you.
I do have a comment on page 23, and certainly at the bottom paragraph from the minister's response, acknowledging that we're the only county that has made this request, but I do see that the ministry has asked our MOH to have a discussion to take a more standardized or collective approach. Now, whether that's, in all due respect, whether that's just lip service here to say, there is some good happening or not, I'm not going to judge that, but that's a little better response than I normally get from the ministry, and it's just a fact. The other thing I wanted to point out was the request of item D. I have responded in writing to Crime Stoppers, and a certificate has been sent to them to support and congratulate them on the work they've done in our counties, and also the request for the flag raising for a policy has been sent to the clerk by my office. So that's been looked after. Any other questions on A, B, or D in the communications? I hear none. I'll call the question. Those in favor? They are approved and as they are recommended. Back to Councillor Heights. I'm going to just read the motion that the clerk has prepared for item C. Excuse me. No, for item C. No. It's item C, okay. That the correspondence from Evelyn Eichenbaum, clerk of the Haldeman County, respecting council appointments as of December the 1st, 2017, be received as information, and that Norfolk Council appoint Councillor Noel Height to the Grand River Conservation Authority to represent the interest of Norfolk County for a term commencing December the 1st, 2017, and ending November the 30th, 2018. Councillor Height, you're certainly in order to move for your own appointment, so that's perfectly in order. So I will have you as the mover, and I would need a seconder to put this on the table. Geisens, it's open now for discussion. Councillor Black, please.
Well, I really don't want to say this, but I feel obligated that I must. And I can't support the motion. And the reason I can't support the motion is later on in our agenda, I have a notice of motion wanting answers from the Conservation Authority why they are being investigated by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and the Ministry of Natural Resources. Until that's resolved, there's a direct connection with the leadership there and the person wanting to be appointed to the Grand River. And I'm sorry to say, I have no faith and I will not support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly respect where Councillor Height is coming from on this, and I appreciate that he's willing to serve. I have difficulty with it from the standpoint of it being the last year of a 4-year term, and I think it probably goes back for the entire history of Norfolk County that we have chosen, because we have such a small interest in the GRCA watershed, to have our neighbors to the east in Haldeman represent our interests. And so my suggestion would be, if this motion is unsuccessful, that Councillor Height make a point before the next, before the end of the term, i.e. November of 2018, that we choose to give Haldeman County some notice if we want to change the appointment process. It would also add another member to the GRCA board. They may have some issues with that just in terms of membership. So I think we need to give them some warning rather than just dropping this on them cold turkey. So I cannot support the motion for those reasons.
Further discussion? Thank you, Councillor Brunton, and Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Maybe many of the councillors won't recall, but I think shortly after the last election, once I saw our assessment from the Grand River Conservation Authority, I asked the identical question, why we had nobody that represented us. I don't know if you recall that, but I asked that question back
I vaguely do. I honestly vaguely do, yes.
A few years ago.
I remember you bringing it up.
I don't see a problem with it. I think we're, what's the word, if they're spending our money, I think we should be represented. That's the way I feel about it. But even though it is very minute, I don't see a problem with it. So I have no problem with it whatsoever.
Thank you, sir. Councillor,
Unless there's some issue with them in terms of finance or something like that.
Councillor Height, and then Columbus.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Council will recall when this first came after our first election, it was on our first or second meeting, and I had asked to be put on this committee then. But unfortunately, I didn't know the processes and to move the motion forward to allow that to happen. I know recently we lost a member at the LPRCA. Bayham's appointed a new councillor, so changing it up from the 3 to 4 year isn't really that out of order. The Conservation Authorities Act is under review right now, and one of the things they will be looking at is a 4-year term instead of the 3-year term, so it coincides with council's term. I think it's very important that Norfolk be on this committee. We spend $30,000 per year. That's their take from us, which isn't a ton of money, but if we are able to leverage the knowledge that their staff bring to the table and take that back with us to the Long Point Region Conservation Authority, I certainly feel that I'm able to do that, Mr. Mayor, and I don't have a problem with that. I'd hope that we could actually move some things forward at the that Long Point Conservation Authority by not reinventing the wheel. Thank you.
Councillor Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I recall the Long Point Conservation Authority a few years back where there was one councillor represented 2 different municipalities, and recently that was changed. Well, recently, I'm saying maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, where they each have their own director at the table. But it had to go through a bylaw change or something at the Conservation Authority level. Similar to what Councillor Oliver is saying, I don't know whether the bylaws would have to be changed at the Conservation Authority before we make this appointment. Like Councillor Oliver mentioned, that there may have to be added a whole new body to the Board of Directors. So I don't know how that would work with this request.
I understand, but I would like you to hear it from the clerk's, her explanation on the whether we're able to appoint someone from here without changing a bylaw or changing it. Thank you. Eligibility, I'm all right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding, and if council wants or so wishes us to take this item back and review it further, we can do that. But again, my understanding is that the resolution from Haldeman County is that seeing if Norfolk will approve the 2 councillors on their behalf, but that Norfolk basically has a seat that we sort of relinquish to Haldeman County to then allow them to appoint 2 councillors. If we so choose to have one member from Norfolk County Council sit on that Conservation Authority, then what council could do is just receive this resolution for information or this communication item, and then we would, as the motion states, Councillor Height be appointed to that on behalf of Norfolk County, and then Haldeman would choose which councillor they would want as their appointed councillor to the Conservation Authority.
Councillor Oliver.
Just for further clarification on that, and I don't mean to contradict the deputy clerk, but I think I'm correct when I say Haldeman County was entitled to 2 members on that board by virtue of its own population. So I don't think we gave up one and they added another one. I think they have 2 already, and we chose to allow those 2 folks to represent our interests. And so I think I'm correct when I say they would have to, as a conservation authority, change their bylaws, if you like, to allow for another member on top of what they have now in terms of, because I can't imagine Haldeman choosing to give up one that it's already entitled to based on its own population. So I think that is the case. The only other thing I want to remind my colleagues of, and that is that I represent, as you know, Haldeman County's interest on the Source Protection Committee, and have for the last 7 or 8 years that it's been in existence. So that mutual sharing and representation is a historical relationship that we've had. And again, I just stress we shouldn't do it on a knee-jerk reaction. I respect my colleagues' request. I see merit in it, but this is the wrong way to do it.
I guess I don't have a problem whatever way we go with this, but I do recall, again, back the last election, did not, and Councillor Columbus and Geisens maybe can refresh my memory, did we not just add by bylaw or by a vote at their last Conservation Authority meeting after the election to add somebody from, was it Norwich area or something? We increased the board members. And that was a simple vote of the board, was it not? Do you remember? If I may ask that question?
Yes, you may.
I do recall that, and that's what I was speaking of a little earlier. And, but I think we had to change our bylaws at the Conservation Authority, or whatever you want to call them, to make that happen.
Okay.
I think that's the way it went.
Okay. Who was the member? Do you remember?
Well, yes, Norwich and Southwest Oxford.
Okay.
So now they both have representation.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? I guess, and before I call the vote, I guess I look at it this way based on the discussion we've had. If we were to go ahead, and the motion is on the floor, if we were to go ahead to approve this, it seemed to me we may run into a problem of saying, well, wait a minute, our bylaw says we've got our full complement, we don't accept a Norfolk appointment. In other words, do we have the ability as a council to appoint somewhere where maybe the bylaw doesn't permit it? I don't know. That's the one side of it, and that's the chance we take of getting a comment back. And the other way, I guess, is to defer this until we see whether we do conform with the bylaw. What's your wishes? I mean, there's a motion here. I'm willing to call the question if you so wish. Any other thoughts on this? I'm not sure which way is the best way to proceed. Councillor Geisens, maybe we could get some wisdom.
You know, I'm not sure there's a lot of wisdom. But anyway, we're on page 27, and if you look at the resolution put forward by Haldeman, it says conditional on the approval of Norfolk County. So don't tell me that we can't appoint somebody to that. Thank you.
Yeah, we have to give approval. You're correct. Bylaw says you have an 8-board member and they end up with 9. I think they're going to have to amend their bylaw. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. Okay, Councillor Wells?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We find ourselves in a quandary. There's no doubt about that. We want to do the right thing. It's a question of what is the right thing. And I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, that we put this on hold and we communicate with the Long Point Conservation Authority and ask what would be the ramifications of this. Would it be that they would have to add another member or not? Grand River, same.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think that we can make any decision we want here, but there is another player involved, and maybe we should find out what the other player feels before we make any major decision and get ourselves into trouble, which we tend to do quite often.
Councillor Wells, as you're well aware, I can't put this on hold. It is on the floor, but a motion of deferral could defer it until we get the answer. Councillor Wells?
I would move a deferral until we get further information and confirmation of whether we can or cannot do this, and what would be the ramifications.
No, that's okay. So you're moving deferral of this till we
Yes,
get
I am.
response? I need a seconder then to defer it. Councillor Columbus? Motion then on the floor to defer this until we get some more information. Discussion on the deferral. We're going to just discuss the deferral, whether you support it or not. Councillor Height.
Mayor Luke, if you look at the date of this letter, it was November 9th. Okay, this is for a term commencing December 1st. So it's taken the 3 weeks to come before council, now to send it over to GRCA, to come back and forth, and we got to wait for our council. We're well past the beginning of the term, December 1st. I hate being the guy that shows up late for class, Mr. Mayor. Like, really? Norfolk County pays for this, right? If the majority of council doesn't want me on the board, so be it, but let's not waste the whole pile of time here.
I'll get you a late note. They probably don't meet till January anyhow, but I got your point. Councillor Wells, please, on the same.
Sure. I just want to say publicly, I don't think it is that we don't want you on the committee. We want to make sure that you have the right to be there, that's all. And I'm sure if you were there, you would do an excellent job. But that's not what we're debating here. It's debating, can we or can we not? And I don't see finding more information as a problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other discussion on deferral? I hear none. I'm going to call the question. Those in favor of deferral? 1, 2, 3, 4. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3. The motion deferred is carried. So we're going to just put that on until we get something off to Haldeman. Get that off tomorrow. Councillor Oliver?
I think, Mr. Mayor, more importantly, off to the GRCA. That's the part that I'm worried about. Even though we and Haldeman might agree, if they don't, it won't happen. So the
Again,
GRCA is pretty important.
I have no problem in the end if we appoint any one of our council members, including Councillor Height, to that board, provided that we can do that. And I'm sure we can, but we're not just sure. Okay, Councillor Brunn, something further?
This, sorry, and I've lost the page here, but the appointment of the Haldeman representative, should that not from us? Should we not wait on that?
Well, I haven't, this is C.
Where is
We
that?
haven't approved. We haven't approved C. Well, I would suggest then that we receive communication. Item C is as we've got approved. I think it's more information. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's, okay.
You're going to add it into the motion? Okay, it'll be added into the motion.
So it is deferred to?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
She'll, our deputy clerk will add that in. Good point, thank you. Yeah, otherwise it's just hanging out there, you're correct. Thank you, Councilor Brunn. I'm going to move on then, please, if I may. We'll go to item 8, reports of committees are next. First one is council and committee meetings, the minutes from November the 21st. That's last week. Should I read the motion first or ask him? Because that's got 11. You want them pulled? Okay, we're going to do it this way. Moved by Councillor Wells and seconded by Councillor Oliver that the open and closed minutes of the Council and Committee of November the 21st, 2017 meeting be approved as presented with the exceptions of resolutions number 11, number 12, and 19. So we'll deal with 11, 12, 19 after we deal with the balance of the report. that the balance of the report be approved as presented with the exception 11, 12, 19. Discussion on the balance. Those in favor? Carried. You have 11, oh, no, here they are here. Yeah. Yes, exactly, as in the package. Let's go, please. I think it's page 35, let me check. That's where 11, 12 are, and of course, 19 is further down on page 39. Councillor Brunn, just before I get to them, I have the motions here. They have not been moved or seconded. They are in front of me in my hands exactly as presented in the report. And I guess my question here, before we get into this, somewhat your intent, because it seems to me that some are, like, number 12, for example, is information. Is there anything, I'm going to start with 12 if you don't mind, because I'm just wondering if you have anything to add to number 12. It seems like it's an information item. Could I get a mover for resolution 12, please? It's just to receive the report. Councillor Height, thank you, as information. It's printed on the bottom of page 35. It's pretty straightforward, receiving report. And a seconder, please. Councillor Geisens. Height is moved. Geisens is second. The report CSD 1738, the combination of Fire Station 9, Port Rowan, and Fire Station 10 at St. Williams be received as information. Councillor Black.
What is the default situation? We've received this as information, or going to receive it as information. Then where does that put the status of this
Well, my response, and I'll look to the county manager next, or perhaps Mr. Cridlin, my response, because I thought about that last Tuesday evening afterwards, is simply business as usual until this council makes a decision in a different direction. I mean, I don't know what else is happening other than 10 and 11 are still,
So the business
9 and 10 are still business as usual.
And businesses as usual means we're going to go ahead and build just the fire hall at St. Williams.
Well, this motion deals with combining them.
Yeah, EMS. Or
This report, the combination of Fire Station 9 and Fire Station 10 be received as information. This is simply receiving the report.
so, needless to say, we still have further decisions to make.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That's the way I see it. Mr. Cridlin, comment?
Through the chair to county councilors. Yeah, I think there's more decisions to make. I think what staff were thinking, hear councilors out tonight, accept it as information, and we can bring something back to this council in the new year, or open discussions on what we can do in the near future.
The report, I recall the recommendation was to not combine them. And they are not combined, so it's just information. We haven't moved on it, so it's still out there to be dealt with. Fair enough? Any other comments on this to receive as information? Those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried. That deals with 12. Now I'll go to number resolution 11. Councillor Brunton, and 11, just give me 1 second here, and I'll be right with you. I'll recognize you first. Okay, well, go ahead. I don't have a motion to mover and seconder, so yeah, you're in order to go ahead and make a comment.
Well, I read this, and I guess I'm somewhat confused, because this motion, the way I read it, if you go to the bottom of it, it says approve the replacement, and further that council approve the replacement of Fire Station 10 St. Williams as per CSD Report 1629, impact on closing St. Williams Fire Station. That motion was defeated. So, I understand that. I guess then we're not replacing it. It stays as is. That's the way I read it. Am I missing something or no? That's,
And we do not approve combination of 9 and 10, but we approve the replacement of 10 as reported in a report, which was last year, CSD 1629 impact on the closing of St. William's Fire Station. So it tells me that this is approving.
it was defeated,
It was defeated, so we're not, at this point,
replacing it.
replacing it.
So it's status quo is what we're, am I correct? That's the way I read it.
Yep. That's the way I read it, too.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Now, I think, just before I get to you, Councillor Height, normally we put the motion on first and then to debate it, but there is no mover seconder yet. When I look at page 35 of my agenda, I wondered why we even have, if I'm missing something, why we even have number 12. Because number 12 is exactly what is up in 11. Well, the difference is be received and be received as information. So I don't know why we needed number 12, but but we have received as information. That was just passed. So, Councillor Height, can you shed any light on 11? Then I think we'll move on here and see if we can figure this out.
Okay, Mayor Luke, I believe the previous staff report, CSD 16-29, we would have to look at the resolution passed then. And that resolution, I believe, was that we replaced the St. Williams Fire Hall and combine it with EMS. Then somehow we got sidetracked and there was another report talking about combining the two fire halls, but how I feel that St. Williams and EMS station are still on the go, because that was approved in CSD 16-29. So having a motion fail, does it do the exact opposite? Because then we didn't need to receive it as information, did we? And that question could have been divided on number 11.
Councillor Height, I'm wondering if in dealing with that report, the recommendations kind of have got us fooled here a little bit. We certainly defeated the combination of Fire Station 9 and 10. There's no question about that. It says so in the second line. But that's defeated, so it makes you wonder whether we are going to combine them. And then you go to the last part, and it says that we approve the replacement of Fire Station 10. It's like we've got 2 or 3 different sort of options that we're all defeating in the same motion. So that's the difficulty we're having here, is we've got, we're sort of dealing with 2 or 3 things in the recommendation that one says we're not combining and the other says we're not going to replace the St. Williams Fire Station number 10, and yet we're sort of, last year said we were going to replace it, and we were looking even for an alternative location than the downtown southeast corner. Councillor Black, please.
Move that we adopt Resolution 11.
I don't have a problem with that, like it's in order. I just want to see, let me just follow that through these 3 things that we adopt. So what you're saying, yeah, but it's got to be worded. There's no defeated on this because that's there last week. So what you're saying is that we receive the report, just follow along on number 11 here with me, that we receive 11, be received, and that council not approve the combination of the fire station?
If we never separated this motion out,
Yes.
the motion would be the same as receiving and adopting the minutes of the CNC. So I'm just merely restating that same motion, that we adopt 11.
Yeah, and I get that, and so what you're saying is it would be adopted as printed, not approving the combination, but reaffirming the approval of replacing Station 10. That's right. Okay. I will put your name as the mover and see if... I wasn't questioning that you couldn't approve a defeated motion. I was just wanting to get in my head what we were doing with that. Black, do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Oliver? All right, now I have the motion as you see it, item 11, page 35, instead of saying defeated, the recommendation, and the motion is to prove it. To the motion, Oliver, Columbus, Geisens.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We obviously got ourselves in a little bit of a difficulty with this motion in that one has a negative connotation to it, the other has a positive action connotation to it. And by defeating it, we technically defeated both, if you like. Mr. Mayor, I do have a question about CSD 16-29, whether Mr. Cridlin can answer it or Councillor Height or the Deputy Clerk. Does anyone recall the timing proposed for the replacement of St. William's Fire Station? What year it's scheduled in the capital plan?
I don't know that, Councillor Oliver. I'm going to ask, you've just, our Deputy Clerk is quick. She has 1629 on her screen. If she'd like to read that, please.
Through the mayor, the resolution regarding staff report CSD 1629, so resolution number 9, was that staff report 1629, impact on closing St. William's Fire Station, be received as information, and that council approve the continued fire protective services offered by the St. William's Fire Station. That was carried, and there was a further resolution moved by Councillor Black that staff be directed to report to council in 2017 with a strategic review of alternate locations for the fire hall located in St. William's, with a review of the feasibility of a combined fire and emergency medical services station for consideration in the 2018 capital budget, and that was approved.
Okay. And that comes in line with what your motion says here. Okay, Councillor Columbus, then Geisens, please.
Mr. Mayor, I just wondered if in the future we can get away from using, like, the way that second paragraph comes across as a double negative. When you put the word not in there, if we could put it in the affirmative and then defeat it. In the future, if we can get away from that, because it is very confusing to all of us, the way we kind of turn this over in our minds.
Council, absolutely, it was terrible form to allow a negative on there. That was entirely my fault. I own that 100%. It will not happen again. Just apologize to council. It's created a lot of procedural confusion, and it shouldn't have been there in the first place. That was pure staff error and nothing further. Thank you.
That's quite all right. You know, this is the odd time council's made a mistake. That includes me as well. No. Yes, Councillor Geisens. It's okay.
I guess I'm still trying to figure this out. We're
Go
talking
ahead.
on number 11, and I think that when the fire chief was here, he said not to join the two together. And are we going to do this to put it back together? I thought that that's what the chief said. He didn't want both, that there shouldn't be happening or whatever. But there was some talk about maybe putting the ambulance down at St. William's. But right now, I think what the chief said was we not put them together. So that's basically why I guess we voted the way that it came through.
Yes, and if you vote in favor of this motion, I say if you do, it doesn't matter to me. If you vote in favor of it, you are in fact voting in favor of not combining the two fire halls. That's what it says. And it's just the fact that when that motion is defeated, it sounds like we are going to combine them. So that says the county manager. I have Height and then Brunton.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. The way it's worded is very confusing right now, and on top of that, you have to go back and look up CSD 16-29. Maybe we could take a few moments now and bring that resolution into this, so that moving forward, you just have to refer to this particular document instead of having to jump back 2 or 3 documents to find that actual resolution. We've moved forward that we're going to combine St. William's with EMS, and that was approved in CSD 1629.
Councillor Height, our deputy clerk just read 1629, the recommendation. Did you want it read again? It's already been approved.
Right.
By council in 2016. It's just simply saying we approve the replacement of Fire Station 10 as per the resolution of last year from council, so I don't know why it has to be. It's referenced.
It's just a reference where we could have details right now.
Motion's already in the books. I don't know, personally, I mean, you can ask the mover seconder if you wish. You want that copied onto this resolution for reference? Thank you, okay. Well, it's already in the books, and I think anybody can look it up. Councilor Brunton?
Well, Your Worship, I was the one that asked to pull this resolution because I was totally confused when I read it. And I guess
I see why. I see why.
sounds of everybody, we're all confused somewhat. You know, I don't know, I'll go back if I may for a minute. I was somewhat disappointed in the report. It was more on the negative, why not? There was no positives of long-term savings. And I think you heard Councillor Sonnenberg talk about every fire truck we buy is approaching $1 million now. And I think, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I would like to see, and I don't know how I bring it forward, we need some kind of a comprehensive study for both, at least for fire, maybe the EMS too, because these two items in our budget are costing us millions of dollars. And we need to look at things. You heard, and I wish he was here today, but he mentioned we got areas out towards Waterford. There's no coverage out there. I mentioned about Selkirk and Jarvis, the vast distance here. We hear nothing but the Fire Underwriters Association, and I've heard different people say, well, we don't buy new fire trucks every 20 years, and now we're into replacing tires on them every 5 years. So these areas of our budget are costing us a fortune, and I think it's time that we took a real hard look at this. And I know it's Councillor Height's ward and everything, but we've got to look at some way of saving money in this type of service, and it's only going to get worse. So I don't know if I'm in order to make a motion that approves this motion or leaves it defeated, but we do need a comprehensive study on what we're going to do long-term with these types of services. And how we do that, I don't know if I got to do a notice of motion or I can ask for that to be considered by staff in another report, because there are definitely a lot of savings in combining EMS with fire, and there's also a lot of savings if we can downsize the number of fire halls and EMS stations we have. So I would like to see a further report. Leave this the way it is. Staff come back and tell us what it would cost to do a comprehensive study on this by some outside agency. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
If I may, we're going to certainly deal with the motion that's on the floor. And I think any further study or staff report is something that's connected, but would be in order another time. And you could talk to the clerk or deputy clerk about whether a notice of motion or whatever. Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, back to my question, I was looking to Mr. Cridlin to see if he would give me the signal on tentatively what year it was that Fire Station St. Williams was scheduled in the capital plan. Is it 2019?
Through the chair, I believe it is 219 or 220.
Okay, so even if it's 2019, it obviously will be subject to an approval of a 2019 capital budget. And so Councillor Brunton and perhaps I agree with him that there would be merit in looking at it in a comprehensive way again. But I think these last two reports, both 1738 and 1629, attempted to do that, to look at them both. But even if we approve motion 11 today, it would all still be subject to a full, thorough review before you commit the $1 million plus to build a new station down there anyway. So there would still be an opportunity for something to come forward before you make that decision. So I can support Councillor, in fact, I seconded it, I think, to actually go ahead and approve 11. It at least eliminates the defeated aspect. I think it does definitively say, for the time being, we're not going to combine the two, but that wouldn't stop a further study.
Okay. Any further discussion on this motion? I'm going to call the question, though. Those in favor? It's carried. Counselor Black?
All right, to ask a question about what Councillor Brunton was proposing, just to see, what sort of direction that we need to take.
This is just the clerk's possible
What's it say?
way it could be handled, and Counselor Black certainly have the floor.
Must that be directed to?
I believe we can. Is that a fair statement? Yes, we can.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, I will.
Let's leave this one. Let's leave this one. Yeah, well, not before budget time. Okay, you ready? I will need it back, and I will read it if it's okay.
Okay, I've changed it already, but...
You've changed it, that you can change it.
Yeah,
I just
well-
said the chair should read it.
Yep, okay,
Well, you're going to read it, okay.
well, if it's going to be my motion, then here's my motion.
Well, everybody's got motions tonight, but
Okay,
I've been the
my
guy
motion-
reading them.
My motion is that staff be directed to investigate the cost and feasibility of a comprehensive study on combining fire and EMS stations in Norfolk County with consideration to mutual aid locations. Because I think we need to take that into
Are
consideration.
you reading the motion or are you debating it?
No, just,
If I get a mover and seconder, I'll read it and then allow debate, please.
you want to sign that? Yeah.
I'm not sure, Counselor Black, if Counselor Brunton gave that to you or you took it out of his hand. I'm not sure. It's been moved. Now the chair will read the motion. Oh, boy. Moved by Counselor Black, seconded by Counselor Brunton, that staff be directed to investigate the cost and feasibility of a comprehensive study on combining fire and EMS stations in Norfolk County with consideration to mutual aid. Oh, boy. Locations. It's on the floor now for discussion. Counselor Black?
And I'm not sure, I was trying to think about the motion itself. Really, what we want to do, and I think this is the gist of it, is through the comprehensive study, determine where the best locations for combined fire and EMS should be. That's the strategic aspect of it. I hope, that's Stephanie, I guess that's what you were thinking, like strategic locations. I don't know if that word locations needs to be in there, but maybe it would be better if it was. And that's why I also included the mutual aid locations, because surrounding us, we have agreements with mutual aid in other counties. So we need to take that into consideration when we're developing this. And we'd also have to take into consideration the location of all of our dry fire hydrants. I'm assuming that would all be included in that. So having said that, would that motion cover that off?
Well, you're asking for a comprehensive study. I would think somebody in the
Well, I
fire
would think
business
so, too.
would, this is putting one where there's no water supply.
Okay, anyway, it's just in speaking in favor of the motion, Mr. Mayor, I have asked for a number of years now for this. I've asked the fire chief, and he's always said, well, his department really isn't in a position to do that work, that it would need to have a comprehensive study done by an outside expert in the field. So, I guess I grumbled at that at the time, and then asked it a couple more times, and now I'm just not happy with not knowing exactly where the best locations would be, and if there are any opportunities to actually increase the level of service and increase the efficiency and our economic viability in terms of fire halls and apparatus.
Councilor Brun?